By name I have called you, by name I will save you. By name you are mine, you are precious to me. By name I have called you, by name I will send you. Forever with you I will be. The best field trip is apple picking. It's the best field trip by far. The teacher took all the students and their parents out to the countryside, to the orchard, and there they were running through the fields. They had a hayride, a corn maze, all the different things. They drank apple cider, and then there came the moment to do the actual apple picking. And so we got all the kids together and explained, take the apple from the tree, not from the ground, not with the squishy, mushy parts, not with the wormholes. And so they all went picking their apples, and the teacher always wants to make it a little bit interesting. So this time what she did was she put a big bushel basket in the center of the circle of children all seated around it. So she had them all sit down, seated in a circle, and in the center was a bushel basket full of apples. And she said, okay, go ahead, take an apple. So all the kids, probably about 10 or 15 of them, piled on. That's my apple. No, that's my apple. Everybody taking an apple. After about 10 or 15 minutes, they all settled down back into the circle, seated on the ground, basket in the middle, and they all had an apple in their hands. And the teacher said, study the apple. Take a good look at it. Study it hard. And so the kids are all looking at their apples, turning them around, looking at them. And then she said to them, okay, now put the apples back in the bushel basket. So all the kids, again, piled on, put their apples into the bushel basket, and then finally, after a few minutes, they settled down back into the circle, and she started telling them about Johnny Appleseed. Anybody here remember Johnny Appleseed? And about how you make apple pie and apple cider and all the wonderful things that you could do with apples, how delicious they are. And after a few minutes, she said to the kids, okay, now go back to that same bushel basket and find your apple. I'm thinking, impossible. Oh, we're in for trouble now. And so they all piled on, and just like before, that's mine, no, that's mine, that's mine. How do you know that's mine, that's mine? And after a few minutes, they all settled back down in the circle, and they all have an apple in their hand once again, and the teacher says, how do you know that's your apple? Hands up. It's mine because I bit it, said a boy. It has my teeth marks in it, they match. It's my apple. One said, this one has a missing stem. No stem on it. It's my apple, I pulled the stem off. The girl said, no, this one's mine because it had a wormhole in it. And the worm's still in there. I know it's mine. One said, no, I know this because it has a big bruise on it. I know this because it's squishy right here, or has a flat side here. Do you know those young children, I think probably about second grade, that young, not one child said, I know it's mine because it's bright, shiny red. Not one said, I know it's mine because it's beautiful. Not one said, I know it's mine because, even the kid that bit it, because it tastes good. They all looked at the apple and found what was wrong with it. They each looked at the apple and said, squishy parts, missing stems, teeth marks, wormholes. Not one said, I know it's mine because it's absolutely beautiful, shiny, sparkly red, and delicious. I wonder if we're not just like those children. That when we look at ourselves, we do the same thing, and when we look at other people, we do the same thing. Do you walk into a room and right away you see the furniture that's out of line, or the dirty dishes in the sink, or that somebody spilled milk on the counter, or that someone left their clothes on the floor? You go into work, right? And you start to see everything that's missing, out of place, out of order, not right. Everything's wrong, not the way it should be. We do that. We all do. A different range, a different scale. But But we see what's wrong instead of seeing what's right. Especially, I think, when we look at ourselves. By name I have called you. By name I will save you. By name you are mine. You are precious to me. By name I have called you. By name I will send you. Forever with you I will be. How do you think about yourself? Have you thought about that? Are you happy? Really happy with yourself? Within yourself? With who you are? With how you've lived your life? With your accomplishments? Depending on how you hear those questions, you might say, well, I'm not as wealthy as I thought I would be at this point in my life. I don't have the job I thought I'd have at this point in my life. I could have a bigger house, a better car, bigger bank account. I could be stronger. I could be smarter. I think when we look at ourselves, what happens to us is we start to pick and pull ourselves apart, and we look at our imperfections. I remember when I lived in Philadelphia, in what they call K&A, Kensington in Philadelphia, right next to the L. Our rectory, the Church of the Visitation, was literally right under the L train. And I spent 10 years in the same room where I could look out at the second floor of the rectory onto the platform of the elevated train. And night and day, all night and day long, doors opening, doors closing, doors opening, doors closing. I will remember that for the rest of my life. But what it meant was, past our rectory door, every day there was foot traffic, and a lot of it. People going to the elevated train to go to work and then coming back, and people going to school and then coming back home. Constant traffic. And I remember one day stepping out the rectory door, and as I went out the rectory door, there was this lady there, a big lady, and she's walking, and she's gesturing, and she's shouting, and she's cursing, and she's swearing, and she's saying all kinds of terrible, terrible things. She's saying, "You're awful, I hate you. You're worse than your father. My life would be better off without you. You're garbage, you're trash." And she's saying in between those things all kinds of words that you can't say in church, you should never say. And so I'm looking and saying, who on earth is she talking to? Who is all this negativity and just forceful energy, negative, hateful, angry, frustrated energy being directed at? About 15 feet behind her, there was a little boy walking, probably about 5 years old, with one of those big overloaded backpacks on. You know how they have those big backpacks? Well, overloaded and just walking. And he's crying one of those silent cries, trying to hold it in. You could see he was trying not to cry, as if to say, I'm not going to let her see that this is hurting me. I'm not going to let her see me cry. I'm going to hold it in. I'm going to be strong. And in front, 15 feet ahead, I hate you. My life would be better off without you. Why did I get stuck with you? You're worse than your father. You think that little 5-year-old boy was saying, no, that's not true. I'm good. God made me beautiful. No, he's thinking, you're right. I'm awful. I'm terrible. I'm garbage. I don't deserve to live. I'm making your life miserable. You'd be better off without me. Maybe that's happened to you, but maybe not that dramatically. But what happens is what? We look at ourselves and we gauge our level of self-love and appreciation. We gauge it, measure it by what people say about us, how they treat us, what people think about us, their attitude toward us. And we start to think, no, I'm not lovable. Nobody could love me. I'm terrible. I'm awful. I don't measure up. I'm not happy enough. I'm not healthy enough. I'm not holy enough. I'm not where I should be at this point in my life. I'm a mess. Maybe not to that extreme, but we all have this in ourselves where we think we don't measure up, where we're not good enough. That's what we think about ourselves, right? Sometimes, especially on bad days, some have bad pandemic days when things just are really awful. We start to look at ourselves and say, oh, I'm a slob. I could be doing so much better. And how do other people look at us? I don't know if you've ever noticed this at parties at your own home when we had parties and things. All the women are in the kitchen, and all the men are usually in the living room or a family room in front of the TV. We kind of like divide ourselves into two groups. But really the conversations are kind of the same. There's not much difference in the conversations. Did you see the purse she has with those shoes? Oh my gosh, who does her hair? I would never put those on my nails. And, you know, in the front room or the family room, it's like, you're still with the Ravens after all these years? When are you going to move on? You still have that pickup truck from 1974? Get a new truck. And the conversation goes on. When are you going to get a better job? What? Your credit limit is what? Where do you invest in? What? And we pick at each other. We start to pull each other apart and tell each other what's wrong. And we start to talk about ourselves like that, and we see what? We're not happy enough. We're not healthy enough. We're not holy enough. We don't measure up. Not only do we think about ourselves that way, but other people are telling us that, kind of reaffirming our own negative self-concept sometimes. I'm just as bad as I thought I was because she's telling me I am. When are you going to learn to pick up after yourself? You say that to people? Did you ever call somebody a lazy good for nothing? I hope not. With all the negativity that there is, we get to a point where the world and the people around us can tell us everything that's wrong with us. You're too heavy. You need to lose weight. You ever watch the commercials? If you watch TV or see the ads that come up on your phone or on Facebook, you need a better degree. It's all kind of college things that you can do online, furthering your education, cosmetic surgery. Watch the news and count how many medications that they offer. If you sit and watch Lester Holt for only 15 minutes, you will see 15 to 20 different medications. Talk to your doctor because you may need this. Something's wrong with you. And that's all their commercials, those ads are saying. Something's wrong with you. You're not right. You're not good enough. You're not happy enough. You're not holy enough. And that's how they sell stuff. They want you to think that you're less, that you're not good enough, that you don't measure up. They want you to think something is wrong with you. What is wrong with you? By name I have called you. By name I will save you. By name you are mine. You are precious to me. By name I have called you. By name I will send you. Forever with you I will be. So we know what we think about ourselves and others. You ever think about what God thinks about you? You ever really just sit down and think about that? What does God think of you? How does God view you? It's good to think about that. Because right away then what we start to think is, all of my past sins, that God is up in heaven and has the list, and he's writing them down. He knows everything, every infraction, every lie, every moment I cheated, every moment I stole, every moment I was an embarrassment to myself and my family, every moment that I failed, everything. He's got it all written down. We start to think that God looks at us the same way as other people do, and that sometimes we do looking at ourselves. Now, I don't mean to say it's all bad. You're saying, oh my gosh, you must think that. But on our bad days, we feel bad about ourselves. And when we think about God, we think God can look at us like we do ourselves. So how does God view you? What does God think when he sees you? How does God understand you? Well, if you want to know, all you have to do is look in this book, in the Bible. This is how we know and come to understand how God views us, how God looks at us, how God understands us. God looks at us and sees us and knows us and understands us. And if you want to know what God knows about you, you look in here. And so let's do that right now, all right? I know you didn't bring a Bible, but maybe tomorrow. I should have said that at the Mass on Sunday. So let's go right away to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. How does God view you? God made them in his image. In the divine image, he created them. Male and female, he created them. You're going to say, well, I knew that. I know I'm the image and likeness of God. How does God view me? Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. I'm the image and likeness of God. You are the image and likeness of God. God looks like you and you look like God. If you want to see what God looks like, look in the mirror. You might say, oh my God. Look at the person next to you. Look at the person next to you. Or across the aisle. That's the image and likeness of God. Each one of us reflects the beauty, the awesomeness, the wonder, the glory of God is shining on your face under your mask. You look like God. God looks like you. You're the image and likeness of God. It's awesome to think about that, how you reflect the glory, the beauty, the awesomeness, the wonder of God. It's true. But wait a minute, doesn't a tree or a flower too reflect God's goodness, awesomeness, beauty, and wonder? Sure. And snowflakes, and trees, and streams, and rivers, and flowers, and dogs, and cats, and chickens, and ants, and spiders, and the stars, and the mountain ranges, and the prairies, and the rainbows, and the clouds. Everything does, right? But you're much more than that, aren't you? You're more than other created things, aren't you? Well, we think, well, maybe we're part of God's creation. We're even aware of that more and more now in the times that we're living, that we are part of God's creation, that whatever happens to creation happens to us. Whatever happens to the world happens to us. So maybe we need to go another step past Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Because isn't everything created somehow a reflection of God's goodness, glory, and awesomeness? And so let's take a step further. And now we're going to go to Exodus. Exodus chapter 3. This is one of my favorite passages. This is where Moses is in the desert taking care of the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro. Exodus chapter 3. You're familiar with that text? And Moses is there, and he's doing pretty good. He's got a life for himself. He's been in the desert now for quite a while. Remember, he fled Egypt because he killed a man. He was hiding out in the desert. We know he's been in the desert for a long time now because he's actually married and got a family and got a pretty good job. And on one of his work days, he's out there tending the flocks. He comes across the burning bush. And there it is, at that moment, Moses and God talk to each other. They share, they converse with each other. And this is the conversation. You know the story, right? God tells Moses to go back to Egypt. He's going, what? I'm a wanted man back there. I don't want to go back there. I got a price on my head. And God says, I want you to go back to Egypt, and I want you to set my people free. I want you to be the liberator of my people. And so we get to Exodus 3:13, but Moses said to God, when I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you. If they ask me, what is his name? What am I to tell them? God replied, I am who am. This is what you will tell them. I am sent me to you. At that moment, we learn God's name. Beautiful. God's name, I am. How many times today did you say that? I'm Bruce, I'm Mary, I'm Tom, I'm Paul, I'm Jack. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm going home. I am. I am. All day we're saying I am. And what happens is you don't even realize it. We can't even identify ourselves without saying God's name first. You can't say who you are without saying God's name first. Because your life, who you are, your existence, depends on God. Your very self, God has you in his hand and he's holding you in life, giving you life. And a sign of that is what? I cannot even say my name without saying the Creator's name first, the one who has given me that life, who continues to hold and sustain me in life and give me my being. That God's life is coursing through your veins. That God's life is teeming, streaming through you, making you who and how you are. That God is that close to us. Amazing to think That God is that close to us, that the very life we have is the life of God living, beating, breathing within us. That you have the very life of God in you. But don't trees and flowers and plants and trees, and more trees and flowers and plants, and the stars and the sun and the moon and animals, don't they all have God's life with them? God holds them in being. God gives them existence. So we have to even go another step further. How does God view you? God looks at you and says what? You're my image. You look like me, I look like you. God looks at us and says, how do I view you? Well, my very life, I've shared it with you. I hold you in being. I give you your very existence. But that just makes us like the rest of creation, really. There's no difference between us and a flower or a butterfly or a tree or a mountain range or the prairies or stars or snow falling. So we need to go another step. And now we're going to go to the New Testament. How does God view you? This is Romans chapter 8. It starts with verse 14. Listen to this carefully. Those who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. You did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you received a spirit of adoption through which we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are God's very own children. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. How does God view you? Not just as an image, a likeness, the appearance on your face. Not just brilliantly glowing with God's goodness and awesomeness. No, not just that. How does God view you? Not just as a being held in existence. No, God looks at you, beloved son, beloved daughter, member of the family. You are my beloved son. You are my beloved daughter. I love you so much. You're much, much more than trees and flowers and plants and clouds and stars and planets and rivers and streams and oceans. You're greater than that. You are the crown of creation. That God looks at you and says, what you do to your own kids, I love you so much. Did you say that to your kids and your grandkids? You know something about this passage if you're a parent or a grandparent or a godparent or an adopted uncle or aunt. You know what that passage is like when you look at your own beloved sons and daughters. But know that God looks at you the same way, with that same tender love, with that same just unconditional, the same overwhelming, overpowering kind of love that mom and dad have in their own hearts as they look on their own children. That God loves you the same way. God says, you're my beloved son, my beloved daughter. I love you so much. I don't know if I could love you anymore. I love you so much I could hardly breathe. By name I have called you. By name I will save you. By name you are mine. You are precious to me. By name I have called you. By name I will send you. Forever with you I will be. When was the last time somebody told you you're beautiful and you weren't trying to get a date? No, but seriously, when was the last time somebody told you you're beautiful? People tell ladies that all the time, women that, you're beautiful. Wow, you look gorgeous. You're beautiful. Guys, they never tell us that, but we know we are. Handsome. But think about that. Really, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. One of my favorite passages in Scripture is in the Psalms, in Psalm 17, that God, through the mouth of the psalmist, the writing of the psalmist, sings because the Psalms are songs. It sings, you are the apple of God's eye. Strange saying, isn't it? Do you notice in Scripture when they want to get your attention that they repeat things? They say it more than once, especially in the Gospels. Jesus always repeats himself. He says things once, and he says it again, then he says it 3 times. Usually it's 3 times. They say it over and over again. In the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, God tells the Israelites, and he tells us 3 times. 3 times. You are the apple of my eye. It's first in the Psalm 17, but then in Proverbs 7, and then in Zechariah chapter 2. 3 times. If you didn't get it the first time, I'm going to tell you again. If you didn't get it the second time, I'm going to tell you again. You are the apple of my eye. Strange saying, isn't it? What does it mean? I've been thinking about that. What does the apple thing mean? The apple of my eye. You are the apple of my eye. And I came back to Genesis. Remember Adam and Eve in the garden? And they're standing before the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that tree that God told them to stay away from. Because if you eat the fruit of that tree, you will surely die. They're standing there, Adam and Eve. You can picture the scene, right? There's the tree, and they're standing there, Adam and Eve, looking at the fruit. And let's be romantic about it, poetic. Let's take poetic license. There doesn't say it was an apple, but let's say it was an apple. In art, they've always depicted it as an apple. There's the apple, and it's shiny and deep red and beautiful. And their mouths are watering because it looks so delicious, and they could grab onto it and eat it. But what they don't realize is somebody's standing behind them. And that somebody is God. And as they're desiring that fruit on that tree, to eat that apple, what they don't realize is God is behind them, looking at them, not at the fruit, looking at them, not at the tree, looking at them and saying, I desire you in the same way. Don't you know that? I'm longing for you in the same way, like you're longing for that fruit. I'm longing for you in the same way. Don't you know that I desire you? I long for you, that I love you so much? Adam and Eve didn't know. They couldn't get it. They didn't understand. That's probably what original sin was. They couldn't understand that God's desire for them was even greater than their own desire for more knowledge and to be like God, which was a temptation that they were invited to hold on to by the serpent. That God desired them. God desires you. God longs for you. God desires you. Wants to be wholly and completely part of your life. Inseparable. God finds you irresistible. That God can't think of anyone but you. That God has you in his sights and says, you are the apple of my eye, and I long for you. I love you. There's no one more special, more awesome, more beautiful, more wonderful than you. You're the greatest thing that ever happened to God. And right now you might be saying, really? Really? I'm the greatest thing that happened to God? That God desires me, and then we start to go through that litany of what's wrong with us again. I'm not smart enough. I'm not tall enough. I don't have as much hair as I'd like to have. I need to do this and get a better car and a bigger house. And my phone doesn't have enough memory, and my computer doesn't go fast enough, and we need more Wi-Fi. And like all the things that we think are wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? Did you know that bruised apples make delicious apple pie? Did you know that? And even apples that you had to cut the wormhole out of, you can still make applesauce. And apples that have been sitting around for a long time are mushy and squishy. You ever have apple chutney? Pretty good. Apple butter? Pretty good. Apple tarts? Pretty good. Can we just make ourselves more hungry? It's just to say that God looks at you and says, I know we can do something beautiful together. Because I find you irresistible. You are the apple of my eye. And I can't think of anyone or anything else that I would rather have and hold as my own forever and ever. That God has you and holds you as his own. And God only wants one thing in return. You know that? That we love him just like he loves us. By name I have called you, by name I have saved you, by name you are mine, you are precious to me. By name I have called you, by name I will send you forever. With you I will be. God looks at you, the apple of his eye, and he looks at you and he says, wow, you look delicious. I love you. That's how God views you. And God can't do anything but love you. And all he wants is for you to love him too.